So welcome to the next episode of the Our Hitchhiker's Guide Through Strategy. Today with me is David Parker, CEO of Cleverciti, and he has a great story to tell how to leap over chasms. But I think that's David's story to tell, not mine. Go ahead.
Great to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Who are you? What is Cleverciti doing?
So, Clever City is really all about solving parking search. So,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, after a city or a airport or someone with a lot of parking has deployed Clever City, you go from a situation where you might be driving in circles for a long time trying to find a parking space to effectively this magical arrival experience of being guided directly into an available spot. And the real reason that we do this is to help our climate, to reduce carbon emissions, reduce unnecessary traffic in cities, and improve quality of life. And I guess that gets us to the crux of the challenge. So we developed a long time ago. Our founder invented this amazing new way to guide drivers, do so not just in a parking garage where you might have been used to seeing parking guidance, but also on a street in the public sphere. And it obviously it's a whole new thing. It took a really long time to get cities and other target customers to really see that this model works. And it was a classic crossing the chasm challenge. So we had some really great early adopters that jumped on and were really excited about the technology for the technology's sake. But then we were able to see really great results. But we had to come up with some other ways to really unlock the value for to get everyone to want to adopt it. And that was seeing also the value of enforcement. So anyway, we can talk more about that.
Exactly. Before we start taking the jump, so I think we now need to like take a step back and then start running. So how would I, as a car driver, see that system in action? Is it an app that I see on my phone, or is it the signage or the like digital signage in the cities that guide me to the next parking garage that's free?
You got it. Both.
Which
Either
one?
either
Which one?
one.
Both. Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. Effectively, it works with we deploy sensors that are AI powered devices that monitor all the parking landscape. That
Mhm.
builds this data layer across the city of like where is every parking space, what's the status, and then with that data, you can guide anyone to a space. So we have digital signs that would guide normal drivers to spaces. We have an app that you might use if you were a frequent visitor or maybe you're a delivery driver that constantly
Mhm.
needs to be routing around the city. And we can even provide the data by API to autonomous cars so that they can know exactly where to park and effectively see around corners that they wouldn't have been able to do before.
Okay. Cool. So it's even going into almost driving, which is another future topic. So this would be an enablement to like also park the cars because they cannot drive around all the time.
Yeah, and actually some of the cities that have deployed our technology are now this year getting Waymo. So the reality of autonomous cars using the data is actually closer than.
It's becoming real. It's really becoming real. Awesome. So in our short pre-call, we you said that famous you solved the invader's dilemma. So what's that exactly? And then let's start to take the leap and see what were the steps in order to get you across that chasm. So what's the innovator's dilemma?
Yeah, so I think we're all pretty familiar probably with the classic innovation curve and starting with early adopters on one side. And then you have this chasm where classically early adopters are like technology enthusiasts or people that are just
Mm.
always trying to get the latest thing, sometimes just for the sake of it being the latest thing. Less
Three
than
3%. I think that's 3% is these like early adopters, those that you can sell to anyways. Okay.
And the number actually, it's funny you just because there was a conference last week where somebody said that they think market penetration of what's now called curb management technology in the U.S. is at about 5%, and the expectation is that over the next few years it dramatically accelerates, and because it's now the talk of the whole industry,
Mhm.
and that effectively like 80% plus of cities are going to have this decade or so.
Okay.
But yeah,
So
the
it's like
percentages
coming from
will work.
an f okay. So it's coming from an older, I don't wanna say old school or backwards, but it's like a previous system which has worked for a long time, and now it's the moment to leap over and start with a new text, take this next leap of faith in a sense, and also, like, finding that moment, when's the right moment to make that jump. If you are too early, you're too early, right? Then no one cares about your solution. If you are too late, others have leaped up front. So it's, I think it's also about the moment when you need to make that shift, right?
Effectively, we had to build a critical mass of early adopters who had actually used the technology, actually generated really positive ROI from it, and been able to build a strong business case around it. And I think that was one of the pieces that we missed earlier on was the at first we were selling guidance for the sake of guidance and for the real goal that we have, which is reducing carbon emissions and congestion. And one of the unlocks that we found was that cities really, while they really want to improve quality of life and reduce carbon emissions, they also have a effectively a business to run in the parking department. They have parking revenue and they have a whole enforcement process. And the data that we generate is also extremely valuable for making that process much more efficient. It's not about slapping a ticket on everyone that might have violated. Issuing it's about increasing payment compliance rate. So getting people to pay for the value they're receiving and issuing sort of good violations. So ones where it's clear that somebody should have had a ticket. Maybe they've been there for 30 minutes without paying and there's no sign that they're going to pay soon. But so having that capability gives us a backdoor in. So we say we can deliver this really strong ROI. We can improve utilization of your parking, which is a challenge that everyone faces. You can do more with less. So it's really hard to retain enforcement officers. Maybe you don't need quite as many anymore. And at the same time, you're getting this wonderful value back to the community of less traffic, less congestion.
Easier way of finding your parking spot. Yeah, you're solving both sides, right? You're solving the B2B side with the cities that have their, as you say, revenue centers to like really drive parking business, but you're also delivering to the end customer who is in the car, maybe Waymo, maybe other autonomous cars that park themselves in the future. I think, yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool to have both. Let's go to the innovator's dilemma, to this disruption that's happening. Is that a disruption you see more happening within Cleverciti, or is that a disruption you are being the catalyst for the cities and for the eras itself? Which of both is it?
So I think we've been lucky to be one of the few companies that started this really early. And over the last few years, there are a few of us now that are all starting to see really strong results and starting to breach into this early majority group of the people that come after the chasm. And it's things like you go to a conference and we might be speaking and there's a couple other companies in our space that are speaking and then the buzz of the conference is all about curb management and how do we solve all the big challenges in front of us.
What were the biggest learnings you had? And that's more from the perspective of Cleverciti, or your role as like guiding this company through that, leaping the chasm by educating everyone that this is a good thing to.
The ROI unlock was probably the biggest learning that we probably should have done that earlier. Spent more time on the product to be able to deliver and prove that value earlier on. We may have gained a couple of years if we had focused on that sooner. But I think the work that we did around building out really strong case studies and finding flagship customers that were in that early adopter phase that we could leverage to really tell the story. That part worked really well. And I think we also see that in the US, for example, there's a 'cause we work in a few different markets. We're headquartered in Germany, but we're seeing the fastest growth in the US right now. And I think there, the parking market is much more tight knit or close knit. There are a lot more forums for municipal parking managers to come together and learn from each other. And so the whole kind of referral cycle, that flywheel that you need is naturally in place in the US, whereas in some other markets where we've seen it hasn't moved as quickly, with it, that those natural forums don't exist.
So it's easier to show what you're able to do, it's easier to educate, but it's also this word of mouth that happens much faster. And if these communities actually exist, are you then also actively building these communities up, like hosting conferences or, I don't know, doing meetups, like really to getting those folks together in, let's say, Europe, Germany, Switzerland? Is that also an active part you are taking, or are you focusing fully on the tech?
There's only so much we can do. We don't have
Mm.
the bandwidth to host our own conferences, but one of the magical things that it made it okay to have a virtual conference, and we hosted quite a few meetings of the minds over the years post COVID, and I think those sessions were helpful. But I do think there's nothing that quite replaces a an in-person discussion for, especially for that sort of relationship building, referral making activity. So
Saying this while we are on a virtual podcast, it's like, but as you said, if you have an office in the Bodensee area, then we simply have to meet there next time you're there because it's really around. So maybe that's the next step. And then using your tool, I will also find a parking spot in that area, probably, yeah.
parking will not be a problem. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now, you said crossing that chasm, going from the 3-5% to the next 10, 20 to the wait and see group really unlocks the big market for you.
Mhm.
What would need to happen within Cleverciti, but also without, like, outside of Cleverciti to, like, really speed that up? Is this more on a faster product development, or is that more on a, yeah, getting more case studies out and more education done for the broader public? This would be the outside, and the inside would be, is this a limit in we cannot deliver any faster because we don't get enough engineers or we don't have the tech available?
Yeah, so we've spent a long time on the readiness for scale, and luckily our company is really well positioned to be able to scale. And so what we're focused on now is really just commercial activity, telling this story, to amplifying the successes of our customers, telling the story of the value they can get. And this is why we're seeing just really take off this
Mhm.
year and
Cool.
last year.
Which also means to being prepared for a growth of the own company, right? So as soon as this takes off, also the organization needs to scale, right, in the right moment.
Yeah, and we're really stoked for that. We've got some great people waiting in the wings looking to join the company, and yeah, it's an exciting time.
So it's the network is already there. So everyone's waiting for this really to take off, and then Clever City grows, and we will see that everywhere. Cool. So what would be your wish? What would be the magic wand if you had one in this context of, yeah, let's say solving parking search. So this was your slogan. We solve parking search. What would be the magic wand, the magic wand that you would tap and say, hey, I want to solve this 100%?
We want to become the dominant design for a city. I think if you look at how cities, there's no problem spending money on traffic lights, on
Mhm.
sewer pipes, on any other piece of sort of infrastructure that's been there for 100 years. We're confident that a decade from now, we will be this sort of technology will be part of the dominant design of a city. And so we just want
Like a sewer pipe. So you're basically saying this will become
just
the sewer
just
pipe,
like a
like
sewer pipe, yeah.
a standard, yeah.
Like when
Okay,
you're the next time you update this particular street, you say, "Oh, it doesn't have its parking sensors yet." And I think we're getting there. There's some major cities in the US that are really starting to deploy our technology at scale.
cool.
And I think if we can, the magic wand would be to just accelerate that a little further,
Okay.
but we're there.
I also see outside of the US, living here in the close area to like Zurich and Bern, where parking is a mess. To be friendly, I think that's why a lot of people, especially in Switzerland, take the train because it's, yeah, you get there and you don't have to wait in queue to get a parking spot. So I think there's a lot of options also in Europe to take that. So not only in the US. While especially with maybe with autonomous driving, there's more possible in the US right now than there would be in Europe because the regulation is a different one. But also here, I see that, yeah, autonomous car will drive around and find their own parking spot. And like in Uber or Waymo, you click your own car coming, pick you up, and then driving away again. These are all scenarios that I think have been dreamt of in the past, but now are getting like closer and closer to reality. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, and I really think the autonomous cars are going to really accelerate this because cities will want to deploy infrastructure to make sure the autonomous cars are gonna work well, smoothly in the city. But there's a really awesome example of city, Paderborn in Germany. They've deployed parking occupancy detection from us across most of the city. They have some other parking data that they've gathered from other areas, so they effectively they have more or less the complete set of parking data that's relevant. And then we've deployed, I think the number is around 60, like 60 really large digital signs all around the city, guiding you effectively turn by turn to a space. And that's a relatively small city. There's dozens and dozens of cities like that in and hundreds across Europe, and that's where we're going. Over the next 5 or 10 years, we expect everyone to be a little
Awesome. Let's take this as our final statement. Be like Paderborn. That's awesome. Be like Paderborn. All right,
good.
David, thanks a lot. I'm taking away as a learning this message of ROI unlock early, right? So not being stuck in that, and maybe that's the help to get across the chasm, not being stuck in that tech idea of, hey, I have a cool tech and I can solve a great problem. It's also about having this business side, and that's a strategic thing I have to do really early in the process. Where can I get a return on invest for the customers I'm deploying that to, especially in the B2B space that you have found, being the cities and being this traffic or parking space managers that have to get revenue. And I think that's my learning from this episode, to really look early for that ROI unlock, even if you're really deep in that tech heaven. Let's put it that way. Yeah. And of course, be like Paderborn. Be like
All
Paderborn.
parking search.
David, thanks a lot for the episode. Yeah. I will be checking these opportunities. Next time I'm in Paderborn, I will clearly watch out and, yeah, go find a parking spot.
Wonderful. It's been great. Spent
Have a nice one. Thanks for the discussion.